Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. This video is about the court cards of the Minchiate and carrying on in this series. My purpose of these compares and contrasts with different decks, and you'll see I've got a couple of different Italian tarots on the table I want to share with you today. One is the Metalli, which is here, is how can we be true to the Minchiate in reading with this unique 97 card deck? What are its differences, and what is it we need to be aware of when we choose these cards for a reading? And today is quite an ambitious video. I'm hoping in several different configurations to compare and contrast the court cards. And I have three different Minchiate decks on the table for you as well, all of which you have seen in this series thus far. So we're looking at the pages, and the deck at the top is from the Lo Scarabeo Anima Antiqua series. This is the Minchiate Florentine. And these are the 4 pages in the order that Minchiate presents the suits. The 2 red suits, the 2 black suits. So we have cups and coins and wands and swords. And you can see that the cups and the coins, the red and the black, have a different energy in the pages. We have female pages, male pages. These are referred to, I believe, as fontinas and fonte. And you'll see that in the other Italian decks, this is not the case. This is very unique to the Minchiate, and I think something that makes this deck well ahead of its time. It's very diverse in that way, and I think is going to give us some fantastic readings. I have spent a lot of time turning the guidebook of Ige and Nadolny from this deck, from Minchiate Restore, into an English working document that I can work with, and have quite enjoyed diving a little deeper because there is sufficient information that is written about the court cards in that book. And yet I find that the principles, the basic principles of these cards doesn't necessarily align with the card descriptions. So I found that in reviewing that book, I really need to trust the artwork and the unique energy of the Minchiate as it is presented through the art. The deck below is the Metalli. This is the work of Marco Benedetti, and you can see this is circa 1650, whereas the Minchiate Florentine is about 200 years later. In the Metalli Tarot, all of the pages or the fonte appear to have more of a masculine nature, though you can definitely see the youthful faces. They aren't doing much of anything. They certainly are observing and being with their element. They don't feel that different from contemporary tarot in that regard. They have definitely received something. The page of coins is certainly protecting that bag of coins. And also I feel that with the pages, there's a sense of, well, now what? Now what am I going to do with this energy? When I look at another inspired Italian tarot, this is Valentina De Luca's work, the Tarocchi Italiani Matro Nua. And again, we have 4 pages that are masculine, and they are standing, and they are certainly not moving or doing anything. Again, observing the coin. Interesting how the cape comes over the cup. The most active of these is the Fonte de Cups, right? The Page of Cups, who is moving and walking down the path. This is such a beautiful card in this deck. And you'll note that the Page of Spades has removed their sword from the scabbard and certainly is in contemplation. So are there any differences between early and late Minchiate patterns in the coins? They are certainly subtle. Again, you can see that the black suits are more active and masculine, and the red suits are standing there, not doing much, though this one looks very determined. A lot of personality in this page of coins. And this is the Bamarzo Minchiate Tarot. And this deck is very similar to the Minchiate al Signo, which is another one that is from the Anima Antiqua series of Lo Scarabeo. Holding the rose in the left hand seems to be characteristic there. And very small shields compared to what we see in the Florentine above. From the Minchiate Restore book, which I'm not showing you here because it is shuffled and probably ready for a reading at the end of this episode, Nadolny and Ije write, the pages are at the service of their element. They embrace it instinctively without thinking, to the point of becoming one with it. They represent the childlike phase of the personality where reflective consciousness is not yet developed. So the Page of Cups, certainly see the youth in this deck here, perhaps this one as well, is young and somewhat naive in the world of water, and yet, like all the other pages, very comfortable in their element. They have grown up in a family where the energy of cups is familiar. The body language of the Page of Coins in the early decks is quite determined and very different from what we see here in the Florentine above. It almost looks as if there's a bit of discomfort, or discomfort perhaps with the responsibility of holding the weight of this coin, maybe even of being a part of a family that values this sort of energy. And I suppose there is slight movement in the feet of the Fantina of the red suits, yet certainly not active. And granted, the element, the symbol that represents the element is not one that you are going to wield in such a manner. I mean, you could hit somebody over the head with a cup or a heavy coin such as we see here, but it certainly feels like the Page of Wands and Swords are ready to get down to business. The knights in the Minchiate Tarot are Chimera. And once again, we can see a more subtle difference between the red suits and the black suits. The black knights are definitely more active. You can see the forelegs are off the ground. The chimera is rearing. It appears as if the chimera is in a battle of some sort, whereas in the red suits, the chimera is quite docile. In the Metelli Tarot, we see a more traditional knight who is riding a horse. And all of the horses in the Metelli Tarot are less than active. That also could have something to do with the amount of space that is available on the card. The Knight of Cups in the Metelli Tarot just makes me laugh and reminds me to not take life so seriously. And when I look ahead here, I wonder what is happening here. If this is perhaps the top of the cup, and this is the cup spilling from the left arm, being held in the left arm here. And the way the feet are flailing, we have a little bit more of a hugging of the horse here. So interesting to look at this artwork. So quite a different energy looking at a knight atop a horse as opposed to a chimera. And again, quite a stark contrast to the rather regal cavalier in the Matronua Tarot. You still observe definitely a more gentle nature in the red suits and a more active nature in the black suits. And so why a chimera for the knights in the Minchiate? Well, Idolni and Ije postulate that this is a progression from the lack of reflection in childhood, but they are caught in the opposition between their human mind and their animal passions. This is adolescence, a period of internal contradictions to resolve in order to grow. There's a really interesting suggestion for a spread in the Minchiate Restore where you place a card below each of the knights and then one above. So the card below would represent the animal nature, and the card above would represent the higher frequency of the human mind. And so I can feel this energy that in their own way, each of the knights is torn between perhaps what they should do with their element and what they want to do with their element. They have a tremendous amount of strength in their lower body and their animal nature, and yet potentially they have the ability to reflect and decide and make a good decision with their human nature. We seem to have a swapping of the nature of the response to the element in the late and early Minchiate, in that the knight, the chimera of coins, is pointing to the coin, whereas the chimera of cups in the late Minchiate is pointing to the cup. Not so much here. When I look at the Minchiate Florentine, all of the knights seem to have tremendous flexibility and athleticism. And I have to say that interpreting these cards in a reading is going to have a very different feel than a knight in any other tarot deck. So how can we compare the red queens and the black queens? Well, both of the red queens are standing. The black queens are seated. So what might you read from that? In the Metalli Tarot, all of the queens are standing. And there appears to be a bit of irreverence in the Queen of Coins in the Metalli Tarot. And I feel that in this deck there is quite a bit of that. It's not one that I have read with, I think just 2 or 3 times. I would like to get another copy of the Metalli Tarot. I find that the Rivoltini borders are quite fragile, and I don't like shuffling them because sometimes they get caught. This is a piece of art for me to treasure. So this might be something that you want to think about in terms of seated and standing. What does that say to you? And I know we have that in the Metalli Tarot as far as the seated emperors and the standing emperors and seated popes and standing popes and things like that. That you might have some personal energy regarding that. Does it evoke a sense of regality, regalness? Is there a sense of confidence or immobility? How does it feel to see someone seated in a chair upon a throne as opposed to standing? And I find it interesting that I believe the king as well, in the suit of coins, has a less ostentatious chair. And you would think that the king of coins and the queen of coins would have the greatest of opulence in their furniture. In the Minchiate Florentine, you also notice there is quite a difference in color between the black suits and the red suits. And that doesn't appear to be the case in the Minchiate Bamarzo. Now, I wonder if we can see that or get any feeling of that in this deck. Well, we definitely have a green garment, so that feels to match here with the Queen of Cups. And then it's really not as clear here. But the swords and the wands perhaps have more of a garment of heraldry. I don't know if that's the right word. Hard to say. Has anyone else noticed that the Queen of Coins appears to have an eye patch in the Bamarzo? And here she is in the Minchiate Restore. I feel quite a smugness to the posture. Very different face in the Queen of Cups. And when I read through the descriptions in the Minchiate Restore and some of the keywords that I would use in a more contemporary deck, I find that a lot of that description just doesn't feel like this artwork looks. I'm not sensing a lot of the Queen of Swords energy that I would traditionally associate with the Queen of Swords, even though that is what is written in the guidebook. And here's another little nugget. Did you notice the face that is on the bodice of the Queen of Swords? I'm going to have to write down some of these questions and ask Amparo about these details because they are quite charming. And if there's anything else that you're picking up on that you would like me to comment on, please be sure to write that down below, and I'll respond to you right away. All right, so what is unique to the Minchiate Kings? Is there anything different that we need to remember when interpreting these cards? I suppose I can also look at facings with the queens and the kings, and so I will put up family groups on the table once I am done with this. So all of the Minchiate Kings are seated, and their chairs appear quite simple. In the Metelli Tarot, 3 of the kings are standing, and one is seated upon, I don't know what. I love the expression of the King of Wands here. And they all appear quite self-assured, comfortable. It almost looks as if this King of Air, King of Swords, is about to stand up. And I know I've noticed that in other tarot decks before. And something quite interesting, while the queens, most of them were seated with their knees apart, all of these kings are seated quite elegantly. And I think that if you didn't know the Metelli Tarot, you could easily mistake this for a page of clubs, page of baton. But it's the crown that signals that this is a king. The page has more of a jester costume. The simplicity of the chairs is quite different in the Matronua below. We have quite opulent thrones in 3 of the 4 kings, and like his counterpart, the King of Coins is seated in more of a simple chair. And notice the simplicity of the hat as well too. I have nothing to prove. I have everything I need, and I have nothing to prove. I don't need to wear a crown. The 2 kings on the right appear battle ready, and I don't really notice that difference in the Minchiate Tarot. It looks like they all might have a protective shield of sorts, a breastplate. Definitely not the case in these 2 cards. In the Minchiate Bamarzo, quite a difference in the clothing between the red suits and the black suits. And again here I can see the King of Swords ready to stand and go. They're all seated on a backless chair. And in the case of the red suits, quite nonchalantly holding their objective suit. And in the Minchiate Florentine, the later Minchiate, you can see they all have beards. Whereas in the earlier Minchiate, you see younger faces in the active suits. And that is the case as well in the other deck that we looked at. Here we see the batons and the swords, no beards. And so if I am reading with a earlier version of the Minchiate, it's certainly something to comment on is the different energy of the kings in the red suits versus the kings in the black suits. And lastly, let's look at family groupings to see if we can learn anything about the Minchiate Tarot. Any nuances with color and so forth. Interesting mirror reflection with the Chimera of Cups, the body position with the Chimera and the King, and the same with the Queen and the Page. Not so obvious in the earlier pattern. And something I did read in the Minchiate Restore book was to note that the flower is cut here, where here the flower is planted and growing. Here we have water flowing, and perhaps another flower growing. And I don't know what you might make of that. Certainly can notice the outdoor versus indoor nature of some of the cards in the Minchiate Florentine. In the Bamarzo, it looks more like these 2 are outdoors and these 2 are indoors. It might be interesting in a reading to have both the Chimera and the King appear near each other, similar body position, holding the coin in the same hand, though the way they're holding the coin is different and the left hand is different. And the page and the queen, their body position certainly reflects each other. I want to know in this card who the page is bringing the coin to. It feels as if the page is going to deliver this coin, the gift of the coin, the energy of the suit, to the next card in the reading. And so interesting how these queens and kings are positioned. The queen standing, the king seated. In neither suit are they really paying attention to each other. And the Chimera of Coins and the Florentine, I just wonder what, it's almost as if this is an athletic tool, but there's some concern. Look at the face, some concern about the weight of the coin and how the weight of the coin is large. It's the largest one in all 4 cards, and it's held close to the head, behind the head, as if the Chimera wants to forget the coin, hide the coin, let it fall into the shrubbery behind. So it looks like in the Suit of Wands there's more cohesion with the king and the queen. They're both looking in the same direction, paying attention to the same thing. Something might be said for that. These are very, very young. These are really young faces on the king and queen. And it's interesting, I'm thinking about the nature of families and how in this suit we have parents with 2 boys, whereas in the previous 2 suits, we have parents with a boy and a girl. And I know that in the tarot, gender is best read as an energy rather than a specific gender. And yet this certainly gives a different feel and a different look to the Suit of Wands. And the next group of cards, the Suit of Swords. Does the nature of air, and I'm thinking of this card from the Major Arcana, does the nature of air feel different in these court cards than in court cards you have previously worked with? For me, I'm just feeling it's a lot different. And I have to say that in this position, I can see more of a Queen of Swords energy. This one here doesn't look so confident. It looks as if she's examining a situation, about to respond by standing up. I'm looking at the hand gesture of the left hand, the open palm. Does that signify something? Is she wanting to receive something, expecting to receive something? And quite different here, the hand appears to be bent back in an awkward position on the lap. And like Amparo did with the numbered minor cards, it appears that there is a subtle nuance of strength or intensity of energy with the color. I didn't really notice that as clearly in the other suits, but definitely I can see it here in the Suit of Swords. All right, here we go. Let's try another reading, my second only reading with the Minchiate, and I decided to use the Florentine Tarot. So, first of all, I'm going to state my inquiry here. And that is the best course of action. And what I mean by this is the nature of my focus over the next few weeks. Is this about my own personal development? Is it better to spend time as a couple, a family? Where would I benefit from putting my energy at this time? And so I have shuffled the deck, and I want to go through these rules that I wrote down that are based on the game of Minchiate again. Still very unfamiliar with me. Look at the bottom of the deck. If it is a trump card or a scoring card, continue to shuffle. All right. Quite a valuable trump card. So here we have a 9 of Wands. Cut the deck. Cut the deck and look at the bottom of the cut. If there is a trump of 20 or greater, or any scoring card, then begin to turn over the cards one by one until a trump under 20 or a suit card with no value is revealed. All right, so I'm going to go with this just because I really want to incorporate the game of Minchiate into my readings. So I need to get rid of this card, so this won't be part of the reading. And then I guess I can start my reading here from the Nine of Swords. Another part of this that I just glanced at is a counterclockwise reading. So I'm going to place down, again, 3 cards just for practice, and I'm going to place them counterclockwise. Should we put down 4? Make it a group of 4. Okay, so what do we have on the table here? We have the first card is the Nine of Swords. And then we have the Seven of Wands, Temperance, and Two of Swords. So how does this make you feel in response to my question? Where is my energy best spent? Temperance is a pretty loud card. It's a 6. So we have a 2, a 9, a 7, and a 6. And that adds up to 24, which in the Minchiate is the Libra card. Interesting, because this is also a Libra-ish looking card, one of balance. There's a 2 here, and 2s can also speak to balance. Both of these are odd numbers. They're both black suits. They're both late in the suit, heavy in energy, wanting to accomplish and get things done. And it feels as if there is a dichotomy between the first 2 cards and the second 2 cards. That there is almost like a reflection of my mind in not knowing where to put my energy at this time. All right, I had a short interruption there, and so I'm just going to start again. The first card feels a bit like drawing a line in the sand. And I know I said this when I was talking about the later black suits, the swords, that the points facing down, it feels like this energy of air wants to be grounded. And I know in the latter card, we have a 2, and yet this 2 is a cross. They're not side by side. And so there is something to be said there, but I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself. We do have crossed elements in 3 of the 4 cards. And I also want to pay attention to this direction. It feels like there's something about this direction that is important. Now, does that direction mean anything in this reading? Does this direction refer to this sword, these 3 wands, these 4 swords? Is it pointing to and from something? Well, not in this reading, but maybe in a way it's replicating the energy of the mixing of the energy from the gold cup to the silver or the blue vessel. And then on the other hand, when I think about the 7 of batons and the fact that it's creating a shield of sorts, is that for my protection? Does that have kind of a Saturnine energy in that I need to be cautious of limitations, overdoing it? Do I need to create boundaries of protection? Just these 2 cards, it just feels like there's a lot that's going on, which is very true. And I need to be really mindful of that and mindful of how I spend my energy, whether it is my mental energy or my active energy, whether this is the work that I do in looking after the finances of the home, the planning and the preparation for things I do on this channel or my other work, the amount of energy that I put into the analyzing of readings for clients and so forth. I think Temperance is speaking very loudly here, that I need to work on this as a virtue, as a quality of healing and mindfulness. And certainly the Two of Swords as the fourth card. I wasn't even going to include this in the reading, but it seemed to want to be a part of this story. Feels really important here. And I kind of like how the stag is resting. The stag is still. These two swords are joined. Though they may be of different mind, they are joined, and there is a place where they can come together. And in all of these cards, there is a point where things can come together. No, it doesn't look like here. The very different energy with a single sword coming down. And then in the Wands card, we do have a central point with these swords. I suppose we do. There's a cross there, right? There's 4 pairs that come together. But there's something about a paring down here, right? This is a lot less and much less. Calming of the mind, perhaps. This makes me think of antenna, communication with the divine. So I'm not really sure what to say here other than I want to be mindful of how I spend my energy. And perhaps when decisions need to be made, that I can consult another. And that this too does speak to being supported in relationship mindfully, that decisions can be made with another. I don't have to make those on my own. So lots to think about. And I want to do many, many more readings with the Minchiate Tarot. Picking up this deck, I did want to say that this one doesn't shuffle very well. It feels kind of cardboardy. The one that I used the other day, the Minchiate Restauré, was certainly, though it feels a little meatier, was shuffling a lot better. It's a softer cardstock. And when you are shuffling 97 cards, I think I'm going to go through all of my decks, and I might do a really quick video on that. Maybe the next time I do a reading video, I will share with you the one that I like shuffling the most. So thanks for being here. You take good care of yourselves. I'll see you soon. Namaste.